You may have heard the term SANE-WASHIng being thrown around in the media recently.
Somebody's coined the phrase SANE-WASHIng.
SANE-WASHIng.
Sane-washed.
SANE-WASHIng.
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 Sane-washed.
Welcome to Newspeak, I'm Holly Kellum. So, what is SANE-WASHIng? Well, it came into vogue recently after a speech that Trump gave at the Economic Club of New York. Trump was asked what specific legislation he would advance to make childcare more affordable. Bear with me here because his response is not short-winded.
Well, I would do that, and we're sitting down. I was somebody, we had Senator Marco Rubio, and my daughter Ivanka was so impactful on that issue. It's a very important issue. But I think when you talk about the kind of numbers that I'm talking about, that, because look, childcare is childcare. There's something, you have to have it. In this country, you have to have it. But when you talk about those numbers compared to the kind of numbers that I'm talking about by taxing foreign nations at levels that they're not used to, but they'll get used to it very quickly. And it's not going to stop them from doing business with us, but they'll have a very substantial tax when they send product into our country. Those numbers are so much bigger than any numbers that we're talking about, including childcare, that it's going to take care. We're going to have, I look forward to having no deficits within a fairly short period of time, coupled with the reductions that I told you about on waste and fraud and all of the other things that are going on in our country. Because I have to stay with childcare. I want to stay with childcare, but those numbers are small relative to the kind of economic numbers that I'm talking about, including growth, but growth also headed up by what the plan is that I just told you about. We're going to be getting in trillions of dollars, and as much as childcare is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kind of numbers we'll be taking in. We're going to make this into an incredible country that can afford to take care of its people, and then we'll worry about the rest of the world. Let's help other people. But we're going to take care of our country first. This is about America first. It's about make America great again. We have to do it because right now we're a failing nation. So we'll take care of it.
Okay, so depending on your familiarity with Trump and his policies, this probably either made no sense whatsoever or you knew exactly where he was going with that answer. He's basically implying that the government can help families pay for childcare if the US puts tariffs, which are like taxes, on goods that come into the country. Now, as someone who has heard Trump talk a lot and knows his policies pretty well, I actually didn't think twice about this speech when I first heard it. He often speaks in shorthand, and if you know the issues he's talking about and you know what his policy positions on them are, it's not hard to connect the dots. But it was the connecting the dots that the media did that drew accusations of SANE-WASHIng. SANE-WASHIng refers to making someone sound more rational or reasonable by presenting their ideas in a more succinct or sanitized fashion than the speaker delivered them. So for example, the Associated Press summed up Trump's speech with the headline, "Trump suggests tariffs can help solve rising childcare costs in a major economic speech." When you read between the lines, that is what he said, but because it just connected the dots without describing the way in which he said it, that earned the AP accusations of SANE-WASHIng. This has actually been something of a debate among journalists for a long time, and it's not just about how to cover rambling politicians. As you'll know if you transcribed a lot of interviews, the kinds of sentence fragments and shorthand that Trump uses is actually pretty common, and it's especially common with people who are speaking to someone they know is familiar with the topic. One of the reasons journalists exist is to translate jargon and complicated concepts into terms that the average person can understand. So what the AP did here was actually what journalists do on a daily basis. When a business leader talks about Q4, most journalists would translate that for the general public into fourth quarter. When a politician refers to AB 4, a good journalist will not only tell the reader they're referring to Assembly Bill 4, but what the bill is about. And when a journalist hears a climate scientist talking about a coronal mass ejection to describe a solar flare, any journalist worth their salt should also explain what a solar flare is. If anything, the media has a bias towards making sense, and sometimes that can be taken as sanitizing what a politician says. But what has always been the antidote to that is quoting the politician politician directly, or if you're working in TV or radio, using a soundbite of them. Generally, journalists will give a summary of what the politician says, followed by what we call color, which is some sound or video or a quote directly from the politician. That balances the audience need to get the gist of what was said without having to sit through their entire speech, and it's still giving the reader, viewer, or listener a taste of how they said it. Now, you may remember after the 2016 election that there was a lot of soul-searching in the news media about whether giving Trump so much free airtime had actually made him president. Well, now ironically, I hear journalists making the counter-argument that journalists should be showing him unadulterated because to not show him is sane-washing him.
Do you show these things in their entirety to let the public see that this is what this guy's saying? Or by not showing it, are you almost helping him by not showing some of the wild things that he says? You're almost sanitizing him or almost making him, or even afterward, I know some people said, well, maybe just show parts of it later, but then that almost is, in a way, kind of helps him by making him seem somewhat normal at times.
So what are you looking for in the debate with Kamala Harris?
I don't feel good about it at all. He'll be bellowing at her. The mics will be off. You won't hear that.
So, are journalists sane-washing Trump, or really any politician that isn't a great speaker when they sum up what he says? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Once again, I'm Kellum, and you're watching Newspeak.